In this video, I'm going to talk about this ASUS ProArt build that I have right here. Now, ProArt is a sub-brand of ASUS that is meant to be more oriented towards the professional user, just like ROG, for example, is more oriented towards gamers. And they originally started this sub-brand with a few professional monitors, but then it kind of slowly expanded to other parts as well. So right now, we have ProArt motherboards, we have ProArt coolers, we have ProArt graphics cards, and we even have ProArt cases. So this build right here has as many ProArt parts as possible, and to match the whole idea of this sub-brand, it is a build that is more workstation focused. So let's see what parts we have right here, let's see how it all fits together, and most importantly, let's see how this build performs. Let's begin. ASUS does have a little bit of history when it comes to its sub-brands. So ROG, for example, is the most famous one, and it is pretty much a synonym for their highest-end gaming-focused gear. And then we have the TUF Gaming branding, which has now grown to be their more mid-range and more value-focused gaming sub-brand. And then we have the ProArt line that was meant for content creators, for example, and other sorts of professional use. So all ProArt stuff is leaning in a very specific direction, which makes it very clear, and I always appreciate that approach. Anyway, let's see what we have right here, what makes these parts stand out and what makes them ProArt worthy. And I'm actually going to start with the motherboard, which was one of the first categories they introduced with the ProArt brand. And the model I have here is the ProArt X670E Creator Wi-Fi. Now, visually, it is what you would expect from a professional focused motherboard. There's no RGB, there's no other gaming accents, so you get a pretty clean and very subtle looking design. But it is still a very well-built board. It has solid VRMs with 1670 amp power stages for the V-Core alone, so it is going to be more than enough for those high-end CPUs that you would expect to use in a workstation like this one. But the things that stand out here are some of the features that you would normally not get with most other motherboards, like 10 gigabit LAN as well as a 2.5 gigabit one, lots of USB ports including two USB 4 ones, or even a Thunderbolt 4 connection that you would get on an Intel version of this board. And these are exactly the features that would add a lot of value to someone who works with video content, for example, but that would make very little sense for a typical home PC or for a gaming system. So this is, again, a very good example of a ProArt product that was made with a specific purpose in mind. And since this is an X670E motherboard, it supports AMD CPUs. And in this particular build, I have the Ryzen 9 7950X, which is a very sensible choice for workstations that might need to do some CPU-heavy work. Now, if you're primarily interested in gaming and your work was second on your priority list, then I would grab the 7950X3D instead. But the 7950X is the better choice for work first to gaming second situations. And these Ryzen 9 CPUs do need a lot of cooling, so here I have the ProArt LC 420 water cooler, which is one of the more recent ProArt products, and I wasn't really sure what ASUS had in mind when they launched the more pro-focused water cooler, but it actually kind of fits. It is a 420mm all-in-one, which makes sense for most high-end workstation CPUs that are very power hungry, and they actually focused on good thermal and good noise performance on this cooler by using Noctua's industrial fans. And then instead of fancy displays that require software to control, they only added a temperature LED gradient that manages to look simple and clean while still being an effective solution to instantly but roughly show you how warm your CPU is. There is no ProArt branded memory just yet, so this build has 64 gigabytes of DDR5 6000 memory from Kingston, which again seems like a decent choice for this configuration. And then we have the ProArt branded GPU, which is another new addition to the ProArt line. It is an RTX 4080 Super, and it is a very capable GPU both for gaming and for creative work. So the card itself is very clean looking and very elegant. It is noticeably smaller than the TUF Gaming and the ROG card, so it can also be a very good choice for smaller cases. Now there's not much else you can do to make a GPU more pro in any way, other than matching it perfectly with the rest of the ProArt hardware and adding a GPU holder to prevent that GPU sag. And all that is in the ProArt PA602 case. It is big, it has enough space for most builds you might have in mind, it is built really well, and it is a great looking case. It has a lot of subtle but actually pretty brilliant details, like if you look through that front grille right here, you can see the subtle outline of the ProArt logo. But it still has that workstation slash professional sort of feel, and of course it comes with a ton of features. Now, some of the features are what you would expect to see on a high-end case like this one, like having a GPU holder that works for both horizontal and vertical mounts. But some other features are definitely more unique in a way. So you get these handles on the side, so you're able to carry a big case like this one, and I really do like that the handles are built in instead of having them stick out like on the ROG Hyperion, for example. You get two small wheels on the back, so it is slightly easier to move it around if you ever needed to do so. But if your workflow requires you to move the case around a lot, it also has these proper wheel mounts at the bottom of the case that fit most regular office chair wheels or even just IKEA wheels. And for some studios, for example, and some offices, you want to be able to move your PC around quickly, so this is a perfect way to do so. On the front panel, you also get a couple of nice extras as well, including a fan control switch to go from auto PWM to full speed with a nice old school clickety switch. And there is a lock to let you lock the power button from accidental presses. But that lock only works for the power button, and you can still accidentally click the reset switch. So there is definitely something they can perhaps look into in the future. Of course, you get dust filters on all sides, and there's even a dust filter sensor that will remind you that the filters are getting too dirty, so you know it is time to clean them. So in my opinion, there are plenty of interesting features that actually make sense from a professional perspective, while visually it reminds me a lot of the elegance that Be Quiet cases have. So when you add all that up, I don't think that the price tag of $220 is unreasonable, considering the build quality, considering design, and what you get with this case. To power the whole system up, we have this 1000 watt 80 plus gold rated power supply from the TUF lineup. And even though you would be fine with a decent 850 watt power supply as well with this particular build, a 1000 watt model is not a huge overkill either, and it does have some room for future upgrades. Now, this system currently has 2 terabytes of storage, which seems like a reasonable starting point, depending on the work you do. And if you need more, you could easily just pick a larger model, or you can just add more SSDs later. Now, this whole build was actually built by a local retailer here in the Netherlands as a part of the ASUS program, and they used a Kingston NV2 SSD. Now, that is a value-focused model, which might be completely fine for a lot of systems, but for a workstation PC, I would personally probably consider getting a different model, and then especially so if you need to do more storage-intensive work. Anyway, altogether like this, the build looks great in my opinion. All the ProArt parts work really well together with their mostly black design with just a few gold details here and there. And of course, looks are always subjective, and in workstations, the look is not really the first thing that you need to think about. But I think it looks elegant and professional, and it would just fit well in any office, no matter what work you do. The thermal performance is excellent, which is not really surprising since the case comes with 2 massive 200 by 38mm intake fans in the front, plus a 140mm outtake fan in the back. In a CPU-heavy workload, the 7950X was pulling around 230 watts and averaging at about 83 degrees Celsius, and the internal temperature was equal to the room temperature. But without any adjustments, it did get very loud, so I measured 51 decibels at a 50 centimeter distance. And there is actually a very good reason for that. So the standard fan profile of basically any motherboard adjusts the fan speed based on the CPU temperature, and it usually makes the fans go at or actually near full speed if the CPU is at 80 degrees or over. And then if you combine that setting with a very power-hungry CPU like a Ryzen 9, for example, or an Intel Core i9, a heavy workload will push them to their limits and the fans would just blow full on. And when you limit the fans to 40 decibels at a 50 centimeter distance, which is an acceptable noise level for a system under load, we're basically seeing the same thermal results as before, but then with a system that is barely audible. And then with that same custom fan setting, while playing Cyberpunk 2077, the results were great too. So the CPU was pulling around 150 watts here, since Cyberpunk is one of the more CPU-heavy games, and it was running at 60 degrees Celsius. The 4080 Super was pulling just over 300 watts, but it was very comfortable with its cores at only 65 degrees, a hotspot of also 65 degrees, and the memory running at 72 degrees Celsius, while the internal air temperature was barely above ambient, standing at 26 degrees Celsius. So you could easily run the fans even slower and quieter if you wanted to. So overall, this is a very, very solid system. The ProArt parts are visually coherent. The motherboard and the case add plenty of features that add some extra value to the pro or semi-pro workflows, and the thermal performance of this case is just excellent. So if you're interested in building something like this for yourself, I'm going to leave a list with all the parts and relevant links in the description down below. But if you want something like this without having to build it yourself, ASUS is actually working together with a lot of system integrators in various countries under their Powered by ASUS program. So this particular build, for example, was loaned to us by Alternate, which is a retailer here in the Netherlands. Now, if you're in Europe, in the Middle East, or in the APAC region, there's currently a very nice promotion going on where until the 21st of May, you can get cash back on many ProArt products. And this goes for when you buy the separate parts, as well as when you buy fully pre-built systems like the one I have right here. Plus, ASUS is also giving away some nice prizes. So if you want to check all that out, I'm going to leave a link in the description below as well. Now that is all I had for today. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and that you found it helpful, at least a bit. And last but not the least, a big thanks to ASUS for sponsoring this video, and big cheers to Alternate for building this system and for letting us borrow it for a bit. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!